Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March Demystifying webinar. Last week, we've been talking about universe, and we will continue the discussions on Red Giant Universe this week. And before we jump into the discussions, the presentations, um, we are here joined by Harry Frank, the senior technical artist who leads the development of the Universe tool in Maxon, and also Jason here. And Jason has provided us real good insights on how to turn the project from very less assets into something like really beautiful last week. You can check that out in the recording. It's really nice. And joining us as well today is Nick Harras. Is Nick there yet?
No, shortly.
Yeah, I think he said he's coming a little bit later.
Yeah, he will
just parking his car.
All right, some usual housekeeping. To check the upcoming events in Maxon, simply go to maxon.net/events. And as you can see, this upcoming Thursday, there will be Ask the Trainer sessions. So if you would like to ask the Maxon trainers about anything about Cinema 4D, about Red Giant tools, feel free to join the webinar. It's this Thursday. And then also, if you want to check the last week recording, it is in our YouTube channel, in Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And as you can see, we already have the one from last week up. And what's nice, you can simply go to the timestamp and go to the point that you like to see.
We can't see your screen. I'm not sure if you're sharing it.
I'm sorry. Okay. Seems like I haven't shared my screen. Oh, how can I do that? Right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Let me just repeat it again. The upcoming events in maxon.net/events, and this upcoming Thursday as the trainer. Feel free to join. And for the recording, you can simply go to Maxon Training Team, and as you can see, there are timestamps to jump directly into the topic that you want to tune in. And also, you can get free t-shirts if you go to maxonmerchstore.myshopify.com, and if you use the discount code, I pasted in the chat, it's demystifying03, and you'll be able to order this t-shirt without paying the full price. You just need to pay the shipping cost. And then feel free to test your knowledge. If you feel like you want to test your knowledge about the Red Giant tools, there are some assessments for Trapcode and Magic Bullet Suite and Universe, and also the VFX Suite. It's all consists of like 50 questions, multiple choice. And yeah, today we'll be talking about the personal top three Universe tools, the personal favorite. And we haven't discussed this yet. We include the element of surprise this week. So there might be overlaps with the presenter, but let's see. Jason, do you mind to start with yours?
No, that's fine.
Alrighty, I can make you presenter. Oh, okay. There you go. And I will turn off my webcam while you're presenting, Jason.
Yeah, I'll do the same. Cool. So as Max said, the idea today is that we're all looking at our own personal 3 favorite Universe tools. I found this quite tricky because I use this quite a lot. I'm showing mine in Premiere Pro because one of the big things I like about the Universe tools is the fact that they work in the edit applications rather than just After Effects. Obviously, they work in After Effects as well, but my primary function is as an editor. So having useful tools which allow me to do things in an edit environment that I couldn't previously do and still can't do within Premiere or Avid without these tools. So that's for me the big thing about Universe. And as you can see, for those who aren't familiar, within Premiere we can call up the Universe dashboard, which shows me all the tools. And it's a brilliant starting point to choose a tool. So I've actually chosen 6, which I've done by letters, but I'm going to go through 3, and later on, if we have more time, we'll go through those. So the first one I'm going to look at is actually the line tool, which is part of the motion graphics, and it pretty much does what it says. You can see on that little demonstration thumbnail, it creates a line. Quite a simple effect. You can see on this picture, I've just stuck one on. We go to the effects controls. As usual with any Universe tools, we have a load of presets. So if I hit choose a preset, go back to our dashboard window, you can see there's a load of presets to get us started. So I can simply hit apply preset, and there you can see a green one. You've obviously got control over the color, the style, so we can go to a Bezier dash, and you can see it's kept the color information, but it's brought in this new line style. And of course, you can save your own custom ones, which is quite useful if you want to make something and share it in a collaboration workflow. Within the effects controls, it obviously differs slightly, but within Premiere, when you select the tool, you can see we get little control crosses. So I can move the start and end point wherever I want, just by pulling and dragging. You can also control the amount of curve. And different crosshairs do different functions. Of course, you've got full control over everything here. But sort of rather go through and build one from scratch, I thought I'd inspire you with some of the things I like about it. So obviously you can control the start point, the end point, whether it's a single curve, like at the moment you can see it's an auto curve. We can go to 3-point Bezier, which allows me to pull around the Bezier, as you can see there, and change the shape. If we go to a 4-point Bezier, it introduces another point, which I'm hoping is that one there. So you can see we can get sort of really wonky lines. And then as you can see, we can play with the icon. At the moment, we've got a basic triangle at the end. You can simply change that. Well, let's go circle for the sake of it. And it goes on and on. You can keep playing with this. The nice thing is when you get something you like let's say, let's change one of these colors and make it go from blue to green. If we like that, as with all Universe tools, I can save that as a preset. Call it Jason's Funky Line. And now that preset, if we go back to choose a preset, we'll see at the bottom, there's Jason's Funky Line. I could easily then copy and paste that, or that will be available within Avid and within After Effects. And likewise, I could email that to Max or Nick or any of the other guys on, and they can use exactly the same one. But a few little things that I've come up with. This is an example of where I think the line's quite useful. It's in football. You can use it to trace the path of a ball. And clearly it's not a scientific approach, but you can see there it's pretty accurate. And my idea is for a promo treatment or opening titles, it's quite a cool little added graphic gizmo. You can see the colors I've matched to the Manchester City uniform. So it starts blue and goes through to the white of the shorts, but keeps the blue arrow. So that's quite a simple idea of just utilizing it in sport. And that was all done in a matter of minutes within Premiere. So you can see it's quite a powerful tool that without this tool would be near impossible to do. Similarly, here's an example in basketball. So you can see this time I've sort of just hand tracked a circle around the ball and create a little dotted line, or dashed line rather. And you can see it's sort of fading out as it goes. So it sort of exaggerates the movement of the ball. And as I say, it's not scientific, it's just kind of cool. It just looks cool as a visual element. Obviously, this is just a straight picture. If you graded this up, it could look really cool in a fast cut opener sequence. Or probably a more traditional use is a map. And this was a little map I did for a previous demo, demonstrating that me being in London and doing the little journey to Nick in Canada. And you can see on this line, so we've got a couple of things happening. Basically, everything other than the map is generated within the line tool. So we have a little icon, which I've got animating to spin on. The text is also generated in the line tool. The line itself, of course, and you can see when it lands, we've got a little spin and the icon scales up as the text appears. And then it's quite subtle, but you can see there's a yellow faint secondary track. At the moment, that's following the same path, but I could vary that and move it along to another path. So anyway, so that will be my number one, is the line tool. I won't spend too long on any of these because obviously everybody's got to do their 3. So my next one, which is one that I'm actually using a lot, is called Progresso. Again, if we go back to the dashboard, it's, where is it? Here. And if we double click that and see, okay, it's not going to let me do it that way. Effect controls, we can choose a preset as usual. And you can see Progresso is basically a graph function that gives you all kinds of really cool graphs along with text elements. And you can see there's a load to start with. And basically just it graphs something over time. So I use this a lot in statistics-based work that I do for international sports events. I put together a couple of quick examples to show a style, but this one here could be used to show some very interesting statistics about an event. And you can see there, that's just 5 instances of a bar graph. If we go to the effect control and find the right layer, see, there you go. You can see we just have 5 different instances and they're all keyframed slightly differently and they give you a different result. So that's, I've also cheated and put an array gun background in, but the key here is, if we turn off the background, the key here is the graph element. And then like the other tools that we were looking at, this has got a ton of presets. And then within the presets, there's loads of control. If I open up one and just give you a quick look, you can see the progress controls how far through the animation is, and you can see there the keyframing to actually make it animate out, which is just a percentage-based progress from 0 up to a number. You've got full control over the color with a load of color maps built in, so you can just simply apply a different color map to one of them. And you can see it's, again, it's infinitely controllable. There's a section on text where you can add different text elements to it, and that can be in any font that you're using. So if you've got a branded font, that's useful. There's also a little marker, which I don't have in this case. So if we just turn it on, you can see a little marker pops up. So it's sort of quite customizable and you can just do so much with it. So another little example, which is like a job I've actually working on currently, but you can see here, if we put our background back on, this is an example of a Champions League football player. You can see this could be showing his percentage of shots on target. So you can see with just a few simple elements, we've already got the makings of a quick graphic built totally in Premiere. Takes no time to build, quite a nice stylish graph with little effort. Obviously I've cheated and there's a few other tools bringing in the background and text, but the graph is the key here and you can see that's quite cool. So that's Progresso, which I like. I think graphs, especially I work mostly in sport and statistics is something everyone cares about, and the fact that we can do a lot within an edit. I do a lot of work where I actually build up these graphs in After Effects and turn them into a MOGRT file, which I then pull into Premiere. So an editor who doesn't know how to use After Effects can just type in a number and everything else happens mathematically. It's incredibly powerful. And there's more. I've done some webinars on that, which are available on the YouTube channel where I go in depth on making 3 stats graphics similar to this if you want more information on this technique. I'm just thinking what my third might be. Let's go with this, I think, KLF, Knoll Light Factory. This is a lens flare package based on Industrial Light and Magic guy's lens package. I think his name's John Knoll. If you've got the Red Giant Complete set, you get the full Knoll Light Factory where you can completely customize every element of it in After Effects and get right into it. But for simple things in editing, I find this incredibly powerful. If we turn off the lens flare here, you can see we have actually no effect on this shot. Okay, well, that's not such a problem. The one key thing is you've got a load of lens flares. It's not sort of infinitely controllable like the full pack is, but you can see we have a nice library of things that we can add quite quickly. I don't know why this isn't working. Always the case, now we've gone all over the place. But one of the cool things about it is once you've chosen the preset you like, and you can see here if I scroll down, it's quite a good collection of presets. And then within each preset, you've got a certain amount of control. You can obviously control the location, the scale, the brightness, and all of that's keyframeable. Excuse me. But one of the cool tricks is if we take a shot like this one here, obviously you can see it's a handheld camera shot. And normally you might sort of track try and track that position, but obviously there's not a lot of detail there to track. So this has a really cool feature in it where if you create a luminance cutout of the light, which is what we've done here. So there's a luminance cutout of the light. I'll just turn on the bottom layer, which is that same shot. So you can see here, there's the luminance over the top. But the nice thing is, if we turn off that so we don't see the cutouts, we just see a lens flare. Turn that off. And then on this bottom layer, we've applied our light factory. And then we've come down here to light location, location tracking, and I'm telling it to use video 2 as the location layer. So the center of the light is being based on wherever the luminance value is in that, because we've got, well, it's actually an inverse alpha. I know that's for the obscuration, but basically it's using the luminance from this picture to work out where to put the flare. So you can see we have quite a natural looking lens flare. In fact, let's make that a bit, beef it up a bit just to exaggerate the idea. Make it a bit brighter too. Okay, there we go, that's pretty obvious. And the nice thing is you can see it's very accurately following along the position of the sun through the handheld shot. The other thing is, that's quite lucky I stopped on that frame, we're also using an obscuration layer, which is actually the same. So because the white was blocked out by the tree, you'd see if I turn this off, the lens flare stays the same strength. But by having the obscuration layer on, it's quite nice. It creates a sort of natural, it's almost like the flare disappears. Obviously this is over the top. If I take that down to 80, make it a bit more subtle, you get the subtle lens flare. As the light is sort of gets narrowed down, you can see it almost sort of fades off at that point there. There's barely any lens flare, but then when the sun's sort of completely in shot, the lens flare is quite natural. So I think that's something that used cleverly you can use throughout different shots, and even enhancing like a shot like that, which started off like that, which is a nice shot in itself. And you can see there's a subtle bit of lens flare in there. That just makes the shot look so much cooler. So they would be my top 3. So the line tool, Progresso, and the KLF tool. So I think at that point, I won't use too much time. I'll hand over to someone else. I don't know.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you, Jason.
No
but
problem.
before we move on to someone else, let me check the chat if there's a questions. Okay, seems like fine. Before we move to the other presenter, I think it's best to launch our poll. We have a poll to see the host software that our audiences is using. Let me start the poll. So if you wouldn't mind, can you please, guys, please fill the poll, and we'll share the result right after this, right away. Okay. So I will just close the poll for this one.
Apparently I can't vote.
Wow.
59 After Effects percent.
We
Wow.
have 59 After Effects user. Nice. All right, for the next poll.
Quick.
So the next poll is, how do you typically work on a project? Are you working in a small team, or do you work collaboratively with a bigger team, or let us know. All right, I will close the poll in 3, 2, and now. And let me share the result. Wow.
One-man bands. Love it.
One-man band.
Yep.
One person.
Cool. All right. we have more polls to come, but before we run the second poll, let us move to Harry. Harry, would you mind sharing us your personal
Sure.
favorite?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I jumped right from another meeting into this, and I was clicking around to get my audio set up, and that's how I accidentally launched the meeting. And that's how you started early, unexpectedly. It doesn't even warn you. It's just like, okay, let's do it.
Go to webinar. Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
So, sharing, or are you sharing my screen, or am I going to do it? I'll share.
Let me make you presenter.
Okay.
Yes.
Show my screen. Okay. So my original my idea for this whole like top 3 was really my focus is about the plugins that I don't see being used a whole lot and I think could be beneficial to people. So sort of the top 3 that you aren't likely using, but I think might possibly should be using. So the first one I was going to do was one called channel surf. And this is an effect that I see a lot in terms of what, people kind of dropping random noise clips in between the clips as a quick transition, which is an easy way to do a transition, especially if you're working in After Effects, because After Effects transitions can be kind of difficult to work with. And actually, that's one of the reasons I'm working in Premiere right now, just to show a transition, because it's easier to drop a transition between 2 clips. So anyway, channel surf is one of those, it's an effect that is kind of based on that sort of channel change kind of effect, where there's some interference and noise and scan lines and skewing, all just different types of distortion kind of layered on top of each other. Now, when I select this and we go to the controls, we'll see that we got a few different what we call sources here. So the source is what we're seeing as we cut into it, which can be either the video source, which is the source from video A, or we can also switch it over to just a SMPTE color bars kind of source, or you can just switch it to black. So it will kind of fade into black as it goes into clip B. Now, as it does the transition, you can either slide, you can do a hard cut. I think hard cut happens in, this isn't a good one to show because it goes right into that elevator, which is opening, and basically goes all white. So I'm going to reset this here. Oops, I'm resetting the wrong one. Reset. So instead of using a slide, if I do a cut, I think it just cuts right at the halfway point. Or no, actually, it cuts right at the top. It cuts at the top of the clip because there's no reason to cut and place differently. If you want it shorter, you just make the transition shorter. So it just kind of cuts into let's see, it's Paul Babb. Recognize these are all clips from one of our short films, Hologram. It's David Hewlett over there. So we'll cut, slide up, or you can actually have it dissolve. Now, I mean, you don't need me to go through each parameter. The training or the getting started tutorial on our site kind of goes through this. But as I keep my eyes open on what people, it's easy for me to recognize universe effects when I see them on broadcast or on YouTube or whatever. Or if YouTube is considered broadcast, I'm not really sure. But I see it on the web and I see it on TV. Of the things that I recognize, I don't see this being used a lot, but I do see similar treatments being used of sort of that cut to noise kind of effect. And I think this just is a bit more interesting way of doing it. Skewing it. I think there's even sort of a secondary image you can bring in to kind of give that feeling of interference. We can turn down the distortion if that's a bit too much.
Harry?
Placement. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but is it also possible to see the clip play through without the scrubbing?
Just to see the like without the transition.
Just the playback without scrubbing the timeline.
Oh yeah.
That is cool. Yeah, thank you, Harry.
Yeah, so it's a fun effect. It works well as a very short effect. So keeping it, the default universe, not universe, but Premiere in general, I think has what, a 30 frame or 1 second, 1 full second transition by default. So keeping this one short is definitely going to be helpful. A common request, which just isn't possible with transition effects, is to output some sort of audio, and it's just not in the API. It's not in the development kit that we have to hook into plugins in general to be able to output audio from a transition plugin. Part of the reason is that it doesn't really exist on any given track. It's between two. It can be. It's just kind of its own little entity when we have a transition clip. So anyway, that's it's channel surf. So that's one that I think I don't see used a whole lot, and I think it could benefit people. Number two, another one that I don't see used a whole lot is one called spot blur, and really all spot blur is just it's a compound blur. But the challenge with using compound blurs is that, well, it's a compound blur. It's not only the effect, but it's a map, a luminance or alpha map that you use on another channel, or in the case of After Effects, you could be in a shape layer or a solid with a circle effect applied, or any number of ways to generate something that is dark in one area and lighter in another area to define areas of contrast to use in a compound blur. Spot blur just came about from the idea, we were kind of talking about this last week, of how we come up with plugins, and spot blur is just like, well, almost all of the time when I'm using compound blur, I'm just drawing a circular shape and I'm applying that to the compound blur. So why not just put those all in one place, right? So spot blur is really just that. It's a circle tool, or sort of an ellipse tool that allows us to draw a shape, and that shape drives the compound blur. So it can be used for any number of transitional kind of effects. So in this case, I've got some text. Let me make this a little bit bigger, because there's no reason to keep it that small. So what I'm doing here is using spot blur and just animate into position. So I'm starting the spot blur on top of the text and then just moving it from the center point, pointing at the screen like you guys can see. So it's starting right in the center point. If I select spot blur, yeah, oh, look at that. You can even see the keyframes and all that goodness. So it starts in the center, and as you can see, that that point control moves to the right and sort of reveals the text. So it can be used as a transitional tool like that. I have this on an adjustment layer, and I just think it's good practice, because at the end of the effect, it has no effect, right? So rather than keep it on the duration of the clip, the adjustment layer allows me to trim it short of the underlying clip and not have to render any effects that don't need to be rendered. Now, another use that you can spot blur is good for is that in this case, this is sort of it's blurring the area at the focus, or at the point, the center point. But we can also invert the blur. So in this case, now I know there's actually a dedicated sort of tilt shift kind of effect built into a universe called Shrinkray, which might not be very obvious because it's not called anything like, it's It's called Shrinkray. So unless you know exactly what it is, you might not be using Shrinkray too much. Shrinkray is actually not a compound blur. It's actually a masked blur that goes on top, which does render a lot more quickly than a compound blur. But sometimes I end up using spot blur as sort of a as that kind of effect, like a tilt shift kind of effect. And really all I have to do is if I click on this show mask, this will kind of show a red area that is the blur map that I'm defining. So if I just make a really large width and kind of adjust the height as I need, and make sure to have it inverted. If I invert it like that, push out to the height just a little bit more. It gives you sort of a quick tilt shift kind of effect, and I can move the position around to keep things in focus if needed. And the amount of blur might want to dial down. Spot blur, I've used spot blur as just a, sometimes it can be a nice transitional tool like this, or, a novelty effect like this, like a tilt shift, or sometimes it's just good to, you just want to blur a very specific spot for whatever reason, for visual effects or whatnot. And it's always been just kind of a useful tool, and I don't see it a lot. So I thought I would say, hey, give this one a try. Taking a peek in questions. No. And then last, there's a lot that I could, I'm sure like Jason, there's a lot that I could have chosen for my third one. But I kind of felt like I had to go with Glowify. And part of it is that this, technically speaking, was like the first effect plugin kind of thing I designed, because I spec'd this out. This was actually based on something I used to do a lot in After Effects, where I would stack together a bunch of different effects, where I would take a text layer and I would pull the matte from the text, and I would overlay some noise, and I would blur the noise and color map the noise. And I always thought, well, this would make a good plugin. And before Universe, before we had an easier method of making sort of smaller plugins like this that weren't a massive effort of all the engineering and product staff and all that kind of stuff, I had made a spec, and it just kind of got shelved for a while because we never had time or resources to do it. So I was very happy to jump in and actually make this one a reality. So this one always holds a special place in my heart because it's kind of like the first plugin I ever did. Now that said, it's actually Glowify 2, and if you've been using Universe for a while, you might have, there was like Glowify Legacy, and then there's like another Glowify, and then now there's Glowify 2. And it's really just, the Glowify 2 is just kind of a refined version of it. It has better HDR awareness in terms of how it's making the glow effect and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like how it should have been done. But anyway, my point is, I guess I should back up. And I think one of the reasons Glowify probably doesn't get used a lot, I'm guessing what happens a lot, let me just find any sort of video footage, is that because, where's my effects? Because Glowify is in the glow category, that if people just end up throwing it on video, right? And it just does not look good on video. It's not meant to be on full frame video. And I'll show you exactly what it looks like. If you've seen this and you're like, what the heck, why would people use Glowify? It's actually Glowify 2 is under its stylized. There, it's just a bunch of blobs on there. And the reason it doesn't, maybe it looks interesting for some folks, but it works with the alpha channel of the text, right? So it starts with the alpha channel, and then it sort of intersects a fractal pattern. And then from there, where those sections intersect, they're blurred and stretched and glowed and all that kind of stuff. So it makes for just kind of this nice shimmery, interesting effect that you can, kind of work with the color maps, keep it more subtle, or, push there's a little boost factor in here. And they can also be horizontal, Which feels very like 90s After Effects to me. I don't know why. This was everybody was all about these sort of over processed, over glowy glows in the 90s. If you don't have any direction, then it just does this sort of soft, glowy kind of shimmery effect. To my knowledge, I've not seen this. Ironically, even though this is the first one I actually made, don't think I've ever actually seen this in broadcast. I mean, I've seen many plugins of Universe in many places, but I've never had that aha moment where I've seen it in like a movie trailer or anything like that. I guess any place that I would have thought I would have seen it. That's a weird tense. So that is Lo-Fi. That's my 3. And this was an interesting approach because, yeah, we had no idea what each person was going to choose. So I would, Jason and I had my thought. I thought I was going to see Progresso out of Jason, and I wasn't sure what the other 2 were. Line is a good choice because it's one of those like, why is it so hard to make a line in, whatever host app you want to name, such as After Effects or Premiere. I just need to point at something. So those are my 3, and I hope I inspire people to give them a try.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. I never know that Lo-Fi picking up the alpha channel. That's why I encountered the problem you pointed out.
It used to be in a dedicated like text effects category, but then when we made the text plugins, when we ported the text plugins from Text Anarchy, and we had like 5 new text plugins, we were like, well, we need a text category, and it didn't make sense to have both text generators and text-based effects all kind of mingling together. So that's when things kind of got bumped around, and Lo-Fi 2 got moved into Stylize. So it should be like Lo-Fi, use this on text or something like that. Unless you know, you might not know to use it on text.
That's really cool. Thank you. Nick, are you there? Do you mind showing us your personal favorite or the one that less used?
Yes, I went the personal favor route.
All right.
I am finding myself from this list to make myself presenter.
I can make you presenter. Or
I already beat you to it.
Perfect.
So this is great. I'm actually inside of After Effects for the demo. One of my favorites, Harry had actually mentioned when he was discussing Blur, but I did want to mention it from my perspective, is Shrinkray. So I agree that it's the name of it is a little deceiving, but this does 2 things combined, which makes, and plus it being GPU accelerated, makes it really easy to create a stylistic look. So even if we see me applying it to this clip by default, it has saturated the clip or added saturation to it, along with 2 narrow areas at the top and bottom of the clip that it is blurring out. And if you were to try to go about this inside of Premiere Pro or After Effects, this would involve a 3-step process. One would be you'd have to apply a blur. Number 2, you'd have to apply a mask to that blur that you would then more than likely have to invert. And number 3, you would then have to apply a saturation effect to, maybe using the Lumetri color panel. But just to have this as a starting point saves a bunch of time off those steps. And inside of Shrinkray, you also have a mask view where it will then present a black and white view of the area that's being blurred out. So with this, I'm going to narrow the area that's in focus by playing with the focus width here. In fact, I have to do it quite a bit because this clip is long. So let me just make that 20 and then slide it over to the 3 houses using the shift key so it's a little bit faster. Narrowing this range of the item that's being in focus, I'm going to turn off my mask view. And I can start to play with the blur along with even how bright that blur is. And if I wasn't looking for the saturation effect, I could either get rid of it completely or increase that amount to like a value of 1. And I just find it to be a really helpful effect, and it just adds a nice blur as well as some saturation, combining multiple effects or that workflow that you would have to do in Premiere Pro or After Effects in multiple steps. So just a really nice utility to have. The other one that's my favorite, and that just sort of shows the power of Universe, and while it's very specific, is HUD components. And this is a comp made of several items from Red Giant tool sets. But before I get into this, let me actually just add HUD components to a new comp. So what I love about this effect, once I add it to a solid, it's in the motion graphic category, is while you see this preset by default, if you haven't brought up the dashboard, take a look at how many presets are in this one effect. And while this is, of course, going to scream out heads-up display design, you could use these tools as a way of creating interesting shape animations that are going to remain stagnant on the screen for a long period of time. And you get some interesting things, too, that you could easily apply to your work, like this radar. The other part to it in the Universe story is if I can get away without keyframing, I'm going to take that option. And this is one of those effects where everything, well, there's only one thing being animated, but you can trigger animation without the need to keyframe, okay? Taking a look at HUD components a little bit further, essentially this is a collection of shapes or 4 elements that can be animated using animation values. And on top of that, each element, like, let me just reset this so we see the individual arc. Each individual element can be replicated. So it has an internal based clone engine. I'm just going to add 5 clones to this base arc. And so we can see that I want to offset the radius a bit. And all of a sudden, with this intricate arc that was created, I've got 5 copies that are being scaled up on the scaled up in value. And then if I head to the animation section, let me just choose one of these default animation types, such as, well, let's go with blink. Now that's blinking. Let me choose Orbit 2D. And notice that we have a speed value. In fact, if I make that number negative, it's going to spin in the opposite direction. Or you could slow it down by just decreasing that speed in half. So this is one element out of 4. And if you're curious to know how many elements are there, you can, of course, go to this drop down. But there's also a visual library of the individual icons that are part of this. It's just cool. I think on another level, if you're looking to take the HUD look out of this and just have a cool shape replicator, you can do so by heading to the composite settings of this, and under the glow section, if we just decrease the glow radius to 0, this is going to just give you those shapes without the color. And now we just have these cool replicated shape patterns that you can use inside of After Effects. Now, I have an example here because one thing is that you might want to build these up and save them as presets inside of Universe. But maybe you're someone who predominantly works inside of After Effects. Now, I have an example here where what I have is a shape layer, which is this outside rectangle, and then these little ticks at the side. And then the 4 individual elements here are pretty much HUD components. So here's one, here's another, and here's a 4th. And then I've used a hacker text element. I know I've just cheated by using an additional effect, but I'll remove that from the mix. If you're working inside of After Effects, you could build something up like this on a shape layer. And one of my favorite things to do is save it as an After Effects preset. So you can take all of the elements that you've used to create a shape in After Effects. So I've basically repeated a shape and a rectangle. I'm going to select all of those under this shape layer. And then my HUD component effects, and just go to the animation menu where I'm going to save this as an animation preset. I think on some Macs in particular, if you go inside, you need to save this in a very specific location for After Effects to see it. And that is in your Documents folder under Adobe, and then the version of After Effects you're on, here's that user preset folder. If I save this, and I'll call this Shape and HUD, that's now saved as a preset. And the trick is, if I now head into a new composition, and then in that new composition, create a shape layer. So that's just a blank shape layer. I could head to my animation presets, go into user presets. There's that shape and HUD. And I have a collection of shapes combined with HUD components to create an end result. I think that kind of combination is great at speeding up workflows for those of you who are working inside of After Effects. Cool. Now, my final effect here is Texturize. And I just love being able to have a series of textures available to add on top of your design or on your video clips. You'll find this in the Stylize category. And when you apply Texturize, you get an extra bonus, which is it includes mask options. So by default, the center, once you apply it to a selected clip, the center of your frame is preserved. Now, if you're looking to get a better view of your texture, we can take two steps. One is to change the blend mode in those settings to none. And the other is to, and then you can see that entire texture. We could also play around with a bunch of blend modes to mix it in with the clip underneath. If you're looking to have this texture, let's say in a specific mode that you've chosen, over the entire image, just head down to the mask options and disable the mask. And now the texture is completely, taking over the car there. We could also just increase the scale of that texture. What's also great about the fact that you have these preset grunge-based textures is that we can play around with its look in terms of opacity, contrast, and blur settings, along with add a tint so that we give it some color, and then even reference or add some damage to this by displacing the actual texture. And a small amount will go a long way to create an interesting stylistic look on your footage. And those are my three favorites inside of Universe.
And Nick, one thing looking at your demo, something I was just going to add to Shrinkray.
Yes.
One thing I really like, because obviously you can do a similar effect in Magic Bullet Looks, but one powerful thing in Shrinkray is the fact that everything's keyframeable. So your focus position, if you had a moving camera shot, you could keep the focus on those three buildings.
That actually reminds me, because you shared with me a look once, Jason, where you had a looks preset built for the map animation that you were talking about earlier, where you had actually used some soft focus controls as well as other controls to have like a spot exposure to increase this exposure inside of looks. Which is really cool. So I think the ability to be able to kind of jump from one to the other is great, but your point about keyframing each of these values, especially if the shot was moving like it is, we could take the focus position and adjust it over time.
Yeah,
And also, Nick, I'm sorry, Jason.
No, go for it.
Is there any way for you to bring in or to import texture using Texturize?
Not with Texturize. It's a preset group of textures.
I see.
So there's no custom option there. Also, just to add to this, HUD components sort of has its own collection of shapes. So you can use those shapes, but you can't reference other shapes. However, there are two other components of Universe, which I think are worth mentioning. One is a ray gun, where you can reference any After Effects shape, if I'm correct, Harry, in terms of as a custom shape to create replicated patterns. And the other is typographic. You can have a custom shape reference there as well to create really quick lower thirds and mixing that in with shapes or icons inside of your After Effects interface.
Yeah, so there's two different things we were talking about there. Texturize, the custom textures, I thought about adding that because I made the Texturize plugin. And I figured at that point, if you're going to import your own texture and bring it in, I didn't see a huge value in redirecting what Texturize is doing to another layer if you've already got the, and I could be wrong. Like if somebody's like, no, that would be really useful. That way I can flip between, you know, this or that. But it didn't seem like a workflow that a whole lot of people would do in terms of like bring it, like if I import a texture and I've already got it there, I can add a mask and change a blend mode and all that kind of stuff. Like,
I see.
I think the value of Texturize is that they're all there and it's kind of pre-built for you. But if I'm wrong there, we can certainly add a custom layer support.
I see.
Custom shape support has been a huge ask for HUD, and I can explain all the technical reasons why it's not there. And it's mostly just because everything in HUD is vector drawn, and swapping between doing like it uses if anybody works on, you know, web design and whatnot, Canvas HTML5, it's like a drawing engine. So anytime that you're going to switch back from, you know, like start a drawing process and then switch to an image and then switch back to drawing, like those switches get expensive in terms of processing. And with HUD, there would be a lot of switching back and forth. So, you know, what would be most beneficial is importing vector-based stuff, and we just don't have right now an easy way of having direct access to point-based media. I can bring in an EPS and put it in the timeline and point HUD at it, but it's going to see an image, right? It's not going to see the vector data. So it would have to get tricky. So anyway, that's probably more over explaining why it's not there. But
Yeah.
but as you mentioned, like the ray gun, it is there, and it's actually doing two different passes. It's doing a drawing pass, and then it goes back and it does the sprite pass where the images are laid in. So it's something I'd like to look at with HUD, definitely.
Cool. Thank you for the insights, Harry. Yeah, before I begin my part, I would like to ask the audience, what is the next universe tools that you would like us to cover, since it is massive, right? And there are plenty of tools. So I will just run the next poll, and you should see that in your screen in seconds.
We need some poll music.
Yeah, exactly. It's the choir, definitely.
I'll make a note for that for our next session. We definitely definitely need some poll music.
All right. Now we'll close the poll and we'll share the result with you guys. All righty.
Interesting, because we have a lot of text tools to talk about.
Cool. All right. Now, let me make myself presenter. And yeah, let me walk you through to my 3 personal favorite, or maybe 4. Yeah, but instead of pointing you out to each favorite tools of mine, the universe tools, the one that I really like, I would like to walk you through process on creating looks, specifically creating a looks that represent an era. These are this most likely are not the looks that you are really proud for, but sometimes you need to do this to get the job done, because sometimes you want to, like, for example, work in a ad campaign and you want to represent a 60s era, and then the 70s, and then the 80s. And you could do that by hand from scratch, but sometimes it takes time. And here, the tools from Universe, as you can see in my note 3, probably you already can guess which are those tools. It can be really helpful. So in my project, I am running RCM, the Resolve Color Management, and I use the DaVinci White Gamut. So I will not have to spend too much time in balancing my image. So the input color space for each clip is the Blackmagic Design 4.6K film Gen 3, right? So the first note that I use to approach the look is that I will balance it a little bit, open it up a little bit, and after that, if I want to create a 60s look, the first thing that comes to my mind is the film emulations look. And I can use the tools like Magic Bullet Film, for example. I know it's not in the universe, but for a easy way out, I can use Magic Bullet Film, for example. And as you can see, I can choose the negative stock and then the print stock. And then after that, I modify the contrast. And after that, after emulating the film looks, what I normally do is I apply a clipping curve. And I want to compress the dynamic range of the clip so that it doesn't have too much dynamic range. I just have enough that I can work with. And that is by using the custom curve and establishing a shoulder point and then the knee point. So I lift up the shoulder point to brighten the image, as you can see. Let me turn on the notes. Yeah, I used the shoulder points to brighten the highlight, and then establishing the knee point to darken the image. But on top of that, I also clip the white, as you can see. Instead of having the white, pure white, I drop the white, I clip the white, and then also I lift the black a little bit. So it looks a little bit more vintage to me. But what if I cannot use Magic Bullet Film? What are the options? Well, in that case, I can use the plugins from Universe called Retrograde. And this is really cool one, as you can see. It has the film stock emulations as well. And then it comes with a frame size and then also the film treatment. And what's really nice is that it also emulates the 18 frames per second playback. So if you know, the old camera normally use shoots in lower frame rates, and they most likely shoots in 18 frame per second. And instead of retranslating your clip to that, you just simply click the checkbox. And if I disable Magic Bullet Film, as you can see, I lose contrast, and I can tackle that by creating a contrast node. And that is just by using the contrast adjustment in the primaries. And what I did in the retrograde is that I choose the 16mm clean, and then I choose the frame size 4:3. I can also choose square if I like to, and then the vignette, and also the default value of the grime, and then the color treatment. And if I want to go further, if I want to go over the top and be like a little bit too, how do you call it, obvious, I can use the overlight to have some light leaks into my footage. And I can do that before the retrograde. The idea that I use the overlight before the retrograde so that it will just stay inside the frame. And if I turn it on, by default, it looks a little bit too much, but you can go with the presets, like for example, the ghost presets that I chose, and then I start to reduce the opacity, just like that. And very simple and very fast, I got my 60s look done. And let's move on and let's see the 70s look. And in the 70s look, it's a little slightly different than the previous one. Here, I approach my footage like I approach my color grading like I am messing around with the camera control. So the first adjustment that I did in this footage is that by using the contrast, establishing the contrast curve, using the custom curves, as you can see, it's just like a very simple S curve, but also with a clipped white just slightly, and then also a lifted faded black a little bit. And then after that, I want to establish the color separations. And I did that by using another curve. And as you can see, what I did here is that I used the custom curve in their separate channel. So if I can create a new node, Shift S. So what I did here is actually I push the shadow area to a cooler hues, while the highlight into the warmer hues. So how did I do that? I did that by lifting my blue in the shadow area. And then also I'm pivoting the adjustment just right over there. And since it's too blue, I can make it a little bit more magenta by adding a little bit green into the same territory. And then also I will just limit it into just the shadow area. And it looks a little bit too green, and I will just drop it a little bit. Now I got my shadow done. And I will move on and tackle the highlight. And to do that, I will use the red curves. And as you can see, just a slight adjustment goes a long way. And then I will just limit it into just the highlight by clicking Alt and click. I can pivot the point into this line. And that's pretty much it, how I did my duotone. So I got the split tone effects just by using the curves. And then after that, I play around with the hue versus hue curve just to make, if you can see, if I disable it, if you can see the foliage in the background, it's not very unified. As you can see, there are some yellower shade of green, and I just reduce that and make it more green by picking up that area. So for example, if I just show you in this node, let me create a new node, Shift S. Shift S will create a new node prior to the node you're selected, and Alt S will create a node after the node you are selecting. So what I did is that I just picked that particular hues, and it creates the point here. And I will just rotate the hue a little bit more to the green. And as you can see, it looks like it gives a little bit more saturations. And I don't want that. And to do so, I can go to the hue versus saturations and pick the same hue and reduce the saturations a little bit. So that's what I did in the HSL node. So if I turn it on, that's how you got it. And then when it comes to 70s, what comes to my mind is the warm washed look. So to do so, you can simply also, I mean, the normal way to do that, like the most common way to do that, is just to play around with a gained wheel and then just shift the point to the yellow area. Well, I can do that, but I don't want to. I want to emulate the effect. It's like it's done in the camera. So how do I do that? Is that by using an OpenFX plugins from Resolve. It's called the chromatic adaptations. So as you can see, what I did is that I select the source illuminant to be standard illuminant, and I set it to D50, which is like 5,000 Kelvin. And then I change the illuminant to be more into the warm territory, the 3,320. And I play around with the tint, and I give a little bit green tint. And then after that, what I did is that I feel that the saturations is a little bit too much, and I can control that by using the saturations versus saturations curve. And as you can see, I desaturate all the highlight. It's a very small adjustment, but as you can see, I desaturate all the highlight starting from the midtones and up. And then after that, I play around with the exposure since it's I feel like a little bit too bright, and I will just drop the exposure a little bit using just the offset wheel slightly to the left. And then next, what I did is that to create the feel of 70s, I used the misfire. And here, as you can see in the misfire, at first it seems like, okay, you only have 3 sliders. There's not much going on there, but you could be wrong because it has a lot of parameters. So if you are using OpenFX in the Resolve and you need more space, you can simply press Shift and F, and you have all these controls to play around. What I did here is that I apply softness and apply fading, and then also the dust, flicker, and then the vignette, as you can see, and then the grain. So if I press Shift F again, make it fit, yeah. And then to tackle the frame size, I use Socialize. And that is just by selecting a preset, the generic 4x3, and apply preset, and that's it. I'm pretty much good to go. And that is the 70s look. Last but not least, let me break down the 80s look, because I think this is the most popular one. And if you think about 80s, what comes to my mind is the Promise filter and the soft diffused look. So what I did is that I keep the same adjustment like the previous one, the same contrast curve, the same duotone curves, and the same HSL. And then also the same chromatic adaptations tool. But instead of having the tint more into the green, I have more magenta tint going on. And then I still use exactly the same saturations versus saturations curve. And then I also use the exposure adjustment. Now, to make the image looks more diffused and soft and glowy, I use the glow plugins from Resolve. And then I just increase the spread. Feel free to play around with all the adjustment here. But what I did is just I increased the spread. And then after that, I used the same misfire. And then also, I want to emulate the TV look, the analog TV look, and I can do that by using the Scan Lines plugin from Resolve as well. So as you can see, when I turn it on, I have like this scan line. The key here is to use more line frequency instead of less, because if you use it less, you have like this very blocky and choppy. So I think around 15 to 20 is a good value. And then after that, I use socialize. And as you already see in the screen, is that I stretch to fit my footage. And that's literally it. That's my 80s look. And those are my favorite universe tools to help you create the looks that represents the specific era fast. Alrighty, let me check the chat if there is any questions. DaVinci Resolve 17 post workshops. Yeah, we will think about it. We will think about it. Perhaps we can do some webinar on it as well. Okie doke. If there's no further questions, let me point you out again to the, let me share my webcam. Let me point you out again to the recording of the sessions. So to check out the recording of the sessions, you can go to our YouTube channel under Maxon Training Team, and the recorded video will be uploaded shortly after this webinar into this channel. And then to check the upcoming events, feel free to go to maxon.net/events, and you can see the upcoming events. And free t-shirts, please feel free to use the demystifying03 code to get free t-shirts in this address, Maxon merch store. And then if you would like to test your skill, get yourself assessed regarding the Red Giant tools, you can go to Red Giant /volume/certifications, and you can take the test. All right. Well,
and what was the code? Is that unaccessible?
Demystifying03. I put it in the chat.
Okay.
All righty. Yeah, it's been very fun. Thank you very much for attending the webinar, and we'll see you next week then. Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you, Jason.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.
See you next week.